At 7:48 this morning, a bomb exploded on a train outside of Chicago, killing everyone on board.
What is my mission?
A secret program called the Source Code will send you back in time to relive the last 8 minutes of a passenger's life on that train. Find the bomb, and you'll find the bomber.
Are you worried about getting now typecasted as the sci-fi guy, or you just love this genre so much you just...
I will do after the next film, because it'll be 3 sci-fi in a row.
Right.
But, no, I'm not worried about getting typecast. I mean, I think there are definitely sci-fi elements in Source Code, but it's a contemporary thriller, I would say. There's definitely, you know, there's sci-fi in it, but it's a contemporary thriller. So for me, there's a pretty wide spectrum in what can be science fiction. I think Moon was maybe more hard sci-fi, and I think this would be kind of in a grey area between hard and soft. So yeah, I think time travel as a subject matter is something a little bit nebulous. You can kind of see how the world might evolve to a place where you're building mining facilities on the moon. As far as how time travel works, I haven't quite worked out. I understand the theory of time travel. I don't quite know how we get from now to a point where we can achieve time travel.
So you can't actually do it yet.
I personally cannot do it other than on film.
Okay, I want to know, you know, after 2 amazing movies, what's your secret? You have to have one. What is your secret?
I don't know if I... Well, thank you very much. I'm glad you liked them both. I don't know if I have a secret. All I would say is that, you know, I've been very fortunate to work with some amazing actors. I had Sam Rockwell in Moon, which made that movie. I don't think there's only one other person in the world I was ever thinking of for Moon. And with Source Code, Jake was actually the guy who brought me on board, and I really wanted to work with Jake. I had been talking about working with him on something, and he was the one who gave me the Source Code script and said, I think maybe this should be the one. So no, and then the rest of the cast on Source Code. I mean, Jeffrey Wright, Vera Farmiga, and Michelle Monaghan, all amazing actors in their own rights, and to have an ensemble like that, it really makes my job very easy.
When you read the script for this the first time,
yeah.
Is it one of those scripts where you have to kind of read 2 or 3 times before you kind of get a handle on it, or you know, how did you react the first time when you read it?
I was very excited about it. I mean, it's funny because, you know, you read. Well, now having a chance to look back on it, I didn't find it that complicated. I immediately knew where it was going. I guess because I'm a science fiction guy, I kind of understood what the mechanics were, what was trying to happen in there. But as far as what appealed to me about the script. Looking back on it now, I can see the similarities with Moon, but when I first read it, I was only seeing the differences, and that's what excited me. You know, more than one actor, that was a good thing. More than one location, another good thing. So no, that's what kind of excited me, and you know, now looking back on it, I can see that there was kind of a thematic similarity between the two.
Speaking of thematic similarities, I noticed in Moon and in Source Code, you had this guy who's kind of looking at his identity from the outside and figuring himself out. Yeah. Was that just a coincidental sort of thing, or are you drawn to that sort of story?
Well, I mean, like I said, it's something which became obvious after we were working on the film. In fact, it was the person who pointed it out to me was Paul Hirsch, who's my editor on Source Code. Paul Hirsch is this amazing Hollywood legend. You may have heard of Empire Strikes Back. Ferris Bueller's Day Off, maybe. He won an Oscar for Ray. He did the first Mission Impossible film, and I think he's doing the new Mission Impossible film as well. He really is a legend in the industry, and it was like going back to film school, having the chance to work with him as my editor. But he was the one who picked up on it fairly early on in the editing process, and I sort of sulked a little bit. I was like, oh, I thought I was doing something totally different. But no, he's an amazing guy, and he was the one who pointed that out to me.
I thought there was some Hitchcock too. Did you?
Absolutely, yeah. No, that was a reference early on that we were going to. It was both, you know, the everyman leading man in Jake, and what we were trying to do with him, and just the way he's dressed as a school teacher. There's a couple of shots which are little homages there with clocks in the background and the stuff on the train, and then we obviously had our score, which was composed by Chris Bacon, and that was definitely a reference we talked about early on.
I remarked about that when I left. I said the music reminded me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course the train. I mean, that's very Hitchcock.
There's a lot there, and also I think maybe a little bit of the sense of humor as well, because I think, you know, in my experience, what really is a signature of those Hitchcock films is that he does have a lightness, a lightness of touch. There's always a little there's a little wink in there.
So going back to the editing, I thought it was, in a movie like this, has to be very tedious, because you don't want to get into like a vantage point situation where every scene is identical, because okay, we know that this
Absolutely.
Either about to spill the coffee. I mean, we're with it, and so I noticed you guys sped that up.
Yeah.
I mean, how does your process in that editing go?
For this, as soon as Jake and I were on the same page about what we wanted to do with the script, the fact the original script was took itself quite seriously. It felt like an episode of 24 at times, and I was the one who said, look, we really got to inject some humor into this and lighten it up. Once we all agreed on that, then I just started graphing it. I started building a chart saying, okay, so these are all the revisits we have to do. This is the way that we can ensure that every time we differentiate it and it doesn't force the audience to watch the same thing again. So it was fairly clinical in the way I approached that. And then once I had worked out what all those differences were going to be and how we were going to avoid repetition, then we could be much more organic and improvisational when we were actually shooting it.
Yeah, well, it worked great.
Thank you.
Okay, on the subject of editing, at the end of the film, it's obviously a common thing because everybody I've heard today.
Yeah.
The end, it doesn't feel like, it was supposed to end and then the last, 5 minutes or so was added in.
Yeah.
Did you go back and, reshoot that, or was that something you knew right from the start that you wanted to add in?
It's a strange one. It's I don't want to give too much away on that, but what we did was rejig some of the material we had, because I had this burning issue that there was a logic question there that for geeks like me they would get hung up on it, and I know I wanted an answer to it. So I pretty much insisted that rather than the more sweet, possibly saccharine ending, which they were talking about doing, and we did try it out, we should go for this more Twilight Zone ending, which I think really addresses a key issue that the geeks would have. It's kind of a loose thread, which I insisted we needed to have an answer to. So
from the start, you knew.
It wasn't necessarily from the start, but I think it was over the course of shooting the film. It was like, this is something I really want to have an answer to. I don't think it's right to just leave this hanging.
So it's not like multiple endings. You didn't shoot multiple endings.
No,
okay.
No, not like that.
Director's cut with all of the possibilities.
Yeah, we could do a director's version where there's multiple different endings. Maybe Blu-ray will allow you to choose your ending. Do you want the happy ending? Do you want the geeky ending? That's a good idea. Maybe next film.
You mentioned that it's more of a thriller than a sci-fi film, as you would describe it, and I think that this movie would clearly have a wider, could potentially reach a wider audience than something like Moon, for example.
Yeah.
So, are you finding that as you're going around talking to people about this, that maybe audiences are kind of getting it or sort of figuring it out at different points in the film? I mean, are you, kind of depending on maybe their level of, sci-fi being plugged into,
I suppose that there is a bit of that. I mean, I think people who come naturally to sci-fi pick up on certain things. There's a couple of winks of my own in the film. Things some of you may have recognized Coulter's father's voice, but that's some of you may not. But there are a couple of little nods in there which I think over the release, after the weeks after the release, I think people will start picking up on, and they'll start noticing some of the details. But it'd be interesting to see, like Inception, there was a period of time after the release of that film where there was an awful lot of dialogue online about what things meant and how they fit together. And I think it'll be different on this film because I think we've approached it slightly differently. But I think there's certainly room for people to have some heated discussions. Hopefully they'll be talking when they come out of the cinema.
Yeah.
Going back to the repetition, what is it like, working with the actors and saying, okay, you're back in this seat, you're going to say this line again, but this time, you're resting your head on your hand, or having to revisit all those moments again and again while you're shooting.
Well, I mean, the period of the film where that's happening the most is obviously when Jake and Michelle are performing together, and Jake and I had a very good shorthand as to how we wanted to approach this, and we were able to be very improvisational. We knew, like I said, we wanted to sort of lighten the tone of the script. That sort of initial decision really had an impact on what it was Jake was going to do. And Jake, Jake himself had an idea of what he wanted to do each iteration. And my job was to really make sure that we captured that, and then to push Jake to do something even a little bit more than what he was planning on doing, so that we could really go to extremes at times. And we had a lot of fun with that. And I think because Jake was going to be doing something so different each time, it made Michelle's job a lot easier, because she was able to bounce off of that. And because she was, for some actors, when you're reacting as opposed to acting, not to sound all sort of film school, but if you're reacting as opposed to acting, it becomes obviously much easier when the actor you're working with is doing so many different things and throwing so many different things at you.
Yeah.
Well, then, as a director, are you more comfortable, I don't want to say micromanaging, but do you like to give them the freedom to kind of just bounce off what the other people are saying, or you like, when you direct, you like your actors to pretty much be and say what they need to say? I mean,
no, I'm pretty open. I leave it pretty organic and let people do what they do best. I mean, I surrounded myself with Paul Hirsch in editing and Don Burgess on cinematography. I'm not going to tell them how to do their jobs, and that's the same with my actors as well. I'm not going to tell them how to do their jobs. I'm going to make suggestions, and if I think something's not working, I'm going to point it out and try and steer them. But actors are good at what they do,
Right.
So I let them do it.
Right.